My name is Alexa White. The day my grandfather's will was read, my brother was already smiling. Not the kind of smile you give family, the kind you give someone when you know you're about to destroy their life. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. And if you people want to attach with me on this journey, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Because what happened in that lawyer's office changed my life forever. I'm 24 years old, and the day my grandfather died, my family thought my future died with him. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began reading the will. My mother sat beside my brother, holding his hand proudly. My aunt kept glancing at me like she was waiting for my reaction. And my brother? Ethan leaned back in his chair like a king already sitting on his throne. Then the lawyer said the words everyone expected. My estate, the house, and the company shares will go to my grandson, Ethan White. The room exploded with happiness. My mother hugged him. My aunt clapped. Someone even laughed. But the moment that burned into my memory forever happened seconds later. Ethan slowly turned toward me. He leaned closer, his voice quiet enough that only I could hear, and he whispered 5 words. "It's over for you, Alexa." Everyone thought I had just lost everything, but what they didn't know was the last thing my grandfather told me the night before he died. A secret. A secret that would turn my brother's victory into the biggest mistake of his life. Ever since childhood, it was clear who everyone loved more. Ethan. If he broke something, he was forgiven. If he failed, the world blamed others. If I succeeded, it was nice, but Ethan, is under a lot of pressure. From birthdays to family dinners, the spotlight always followed him and I stayed in the shadows. Except Grandpa saw everything. He saw the arrogance, the lies, the entitlement, and he saw how quietly I worked, how I observed, learned, and remembered every detail. When I was 16, Grandpa started taking me to the company office. Contracts, negotiations, even client meetings. He wanted me prepared. Ethan never cared. Parties, expensive gadgets, and loud laughter were more important to him. Grandpa warned me once, just before he got sick. Family doesn't always protect you. People's true faces show in time. I didn't fully understand it then, but I would. When Grandpa fell ill, I was there every evening. I prepared his meals, helped with medication, and listened to his stories. He talked about the company, about life, and sometimes he just watched me, as if memorizing me. The night before he passed, he whispered a secret, a sentence I would carry in my heart forever, something he never wrote in the will, something Ethan would never suspect. The day of the will, the room was tense. My mother clutched Ethan's hand, smiling like she'd already won. My aunt glanced at me with curiosity tinged with pity, and Ethan leaned back, confident, smirking like a king. When the lawyer read the will and handed everything to Ethan, the house, the company shares, all of it, laughter filled the room. He turned to me slowly and whispered, "It's over for you." He thought he had won, but he didn't know about Grandpa's secret. For weeks, I stayed quiet. I observed Ethan, noting every habit, every weakness. He strutted through the company as if it were a playground, ignoring contracts he didn't understand and decisions he didn't care about. My coworkers noticed too. Mismanaged schedules, overlooked opportunities, and minor errors piling up. Everyone assumed Ethan was unstoppable because of his family name, but under the surface, cracks were forming. It started with small moves, a missed shipment here, a confused client there. I quietly guided the company from behind the scenes, sending subtle corrections and suggestions under Grandpa's old accounts, emails, and notes. No one suspected me. Ethan took credit for anything that seemed to go right. He blamed chaos on others when it went wrong. Then came the confrontation. I didn't yell, I didn't storm in. I waited until he was alone, in Grandpa's office, the place where he had never bothered to learn anything. "You took everything," I said, calm but steady. letting the weight of my words hang in the air. Ethan smirked. "Everything? You?" he said, incredulous. His voice dripped with arrogance. "I'm the one who inherited the house, the company, the legacy. You? What are you even going to do?" I smiled slightly, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that hides everything. "You'll see," I said softly. "Grandpa left me something you'll never see coming." For a moment, his smirk faltered, just a flicker. Then he leaned back, confident again. "You're delusional. He left me everything. There's nothing for you." I didn't respond. I let the silence settle between us, heavy and suffocating. I turned and left, letting the door click behind me. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, his arrogance slightly shaken, though he'd never admit it. That night, I went through Grandpa's old study, files, letters, ledgers, everything he had kept secret from Ethan, everything he had entrusted to me. And there it was, detailed instructions for key company accounts, client contacts, financial strategies, and legal loopholes. Ethan had no idea. All the power he thought he had was only surface deep. Grandpa had prepared me for this moment, and I wasn't about to waste it. Over the next few weeks, I moved quietly. I used my knowledge to secure contracts, improve operations, and fix the errors Ethan had created. Coworkers started noticing improvements. Clients called to thank the company for professional handling they hadn't experienced in months. And yet, Ethan still strutted around like a king, oblivious to the fact that the company's stability rested on my hands. At family dinners, his arrogance never faltered. He bragged about decisions he hadn't made, laughed at stories that weren't his own, and paraded in front of relatives who still admired him blindly. And I smiled, politely, silently watching, letting him feel invincible, letting him think he had won. Because he hadn't. Ethan's confidence, his arrogance, his smirk, those were his weaknesses. He underestimated me. He underestimated what Grandpa had taught me, what I had learned in silence, and what I was about to use. And soon he would discover that the golden child could fall, that the quiet one in the shadows could take back everything, not through anger, not through confrontation, but through patience, intelligence, and precision. I remembered Grandpa's words. True power is often invisible until it strikes. Ethan thought he had finished me, but the truth was he had only played into Grandpa's final lesson. I was ready. The game had begun.
Ethan still believed he was untouchable, the kind of arrogance that makes people blind to everything around them, and he was, for now. I watched him closely, learning how he moved, what decisions he ignored, and which mistakes he didn't even notice. Every day he strutted through the company like it belonged to him, and every day I quietly corrected his errors, applied Grandpa's secret strategies, and ensured that no client or partner felt neglected. Ethan took all the credit. Everyone else thought he was a genius, but behind the curtain, it was me. It started small. I sent emails to key clients, subtly redirecting their complaints into opportunities. I adjusted contracts Ethan had carelessly approved, ensuring that any loopholes benefited the company, not him. I created invisible safety nets in accounts so that whenever Ethan mismanaged finances, it seemed minor, almost unnoticeable. He never suspected me. He never suspected anyone. He assumed his arrogance was enough to shield him. Family gatherings were no different. Ethan boasted endlessly about my company and my inheritance, as if Grandpa's guidance didn't even exist. My mother hung on his every word, nodding, smiling, approving. My aunt whispered praise into his ears. I smiled politely, listening carefully, cataloging every weakness, every misstep, every inflated, ego-driven comment. Because this wasn't just about business, this was personal. One afternoon, a major client called about a shipping disaster. Ethan panicked, barking orders at the staff, blaming others, making a scene. I intervened subtly, correcting the logistics error without him knowing.
By the time he realized, I had already fixed it, and yet he still took the credit. I didn't confront him. I let him bask in false glory, letting his arrogance grow unchecked. Meanwhile, I started planting seeds. I called contacts Grandpa had trusted me with, built relationships quietly, and positioned myself as a stabilizing force. Ethan was too self-absorbed to notice the network forming around me. Colleagues began asking me questions about procedures, clients sought me out for advice, and slowly I became indispensable, invisible to him, but visible to everyone else who mattered. Then came the first big test. Ethan made a reckless decision. He signed a contract without reviewing the fine print. If executed, it could have cost the company millions. I discovered it hours before the deal went public. Instead of confronting him, I used Grandpa's secret instructions to subtly redirect the contract's clauses, protecting the company while ensuring that Ethan's role appeared incompetent in retrospect. When the contract was reviewed later by the board, Ethan's mistakes were undeniable, and yet no one knew it was me who had saved the company behind the scenes. Family noticed the difference. Some whispered about how the company seemed smoother, more professional. Some wondered how operations improved overnight. Ethan didn't notice. He was too busy showing off, too busy enjoying the illusion of control. I smiled silently. Grandpa had always said, "Let them think they are winning. The truth is far more powerful when it strikes unexpectedly." I also started planting seeds of doubt among our relatives. Little comments here, carefully worded questions there, about Ethan's impulsive decisions, about his reliance on appearances rather than substance. No accusations, just subtle hints. Family members began noticing cracks they hadn't seen before. His smug confidence started to falter, though Ethan never realized why. The most important part of my plan, however, wasn't about the company or even family. It was about Ethan himself. I needed him to underestimate me completely. I needed him to believe he was untouchable. Only then could I execute Grandpa's final lesson. One evening, I found him in Grandpa's office again, the room smelling faintly of old leather and cedar, the same smell that had always reminded me of safety and guidance. He was scrolling through his phone, chuckling at some meme, completely unaware that the office's financial files had been subtly reorganized under my supervision. I leaned against the doorframe, silent. "You think you're smart," I said softly. Ethan looked up, startled. "I am smart," he said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. I smiled, calm, almost serene. "You think you inherited everything, that Grandpa left nothing for me." He laughed. "You? Nothing. You never worked for it. You never earned it. You're just background noise." I didn't reply. I let the silence stretch. He didn't know that every background action I had taken over the last weeks had strengthened my position, fixed his mistakes, and built a network of allies that he would never suspect. "You should be careful," I whispered finally, "because the person you're ignoring is the one holding the cards you can't even see." His smirk wavered. For the first time, there was uncertainty in his eyes, but he masked it quickly, as if a crack could never exist in the armor he wore so arrogantly. He chuckled. "You're delusional," he said. "I'll always be ahead of you. Always." I nodded slowly, hiding a smile. "We'll see." The next morning, my first major move unfolded. A critical client had been considering leaving due to a long-term issue Ethan had ignored. I personally contacted them, provided solutions, and built trust quietly. When Ethan found out, he tried to swoop in and take credit, but it was too late. The client publicly acknowledged my leadership in correspondence. My reputation was growing. Ethan's credibility began to waver. Family members noticed. Whispers started. Glances exchanged. Ethan felt it. He could sense the change, though he didn't understand its source. He thought I was lucky. I knew better. Luck had nothing to do with it. Preparation, patience, and Grandpa's guidance did. Every move I made now was deliberate, calculated, invisible.
every victory unseen, every mistake Ethan made highlighted by my subtle corrections. Slowly, silently, he was losing control. Not through confrontation, not through anger, but through strategy, precision, and patience. And the best part? Ethan still thought he was winning, because in this game, the one who waits, observes, and plans is always the one who strikes last. Grandpa had prepared me for this. For months, for years, every lesson he whispered in my ear, every detail he taught me, every secret document he shared, it was all leading to this. Ethan had underestimated me. He had assumed arrogance was enough to protect him. He had assumed the shadows held nothing. He was wrong, and soon he would realize that the quiet one, the one in the background, the one he mocked and ignored, had been holding all the power all along. Ethan's arrogance had always been his armor. He believed his charm, his smirk, and his family's blind faith could shield him from anything. But arrogance, as Grandpa always said, is a fragile thing. It breaks under pressure and it blinds the one who wears it. The first step was subtle. I began documenting everything Ethan had done wrong. Contracts signed without review, decisions ignored, shipments delayed, missed opportunities. Each mistake was carefully noted, time-stamped, and backed by evidence. I didn't need to confront him directly. No confrontation would alert him. Instead, I would let the proof speak for itself, piece by piece, so that the world and our family would see the cracks in his perfect facade. At the office, I positioned myself as a quiet observer, the invisible hand guiding the company, while Ethan continued to strut around as if he were the mastermind. Colleagues began seeking my advice more openly. Even the board members noticed my presence, my strategic insights, and my ability to correct problems before they became disasters. Yet Ethan remained oblivious. Every compliment, every recognition, I let him take credit for, all part of the plan. He had to believe he was untouchable. Family gatherings became my next battlefield. I began weaving stories of Ethan's impulsive decisions into casual conversations, never accusing, never raising my voice. I asked questions, subtly highlighting consequences he had ignored, planting seeds of doubt. "Did you see how the shipment was delayed last week?" I would ask quietly, watching the conversation ripple across the room. It was almost a disaster, but luckily it was corrected. Everyone assumed I was concerned for the company, not realizing the implication that Ethan had mismanaged it. The first real crack appeared at a family dinner. Ethan, as usual, was boasting about the company, flaunting his inheritance, laughing at anecdotes that weren't even his. I sat quietly, sipping my drink, listening, and then I dropped the first proof. A casual comment, a smile. "Oh, Ethan, did you notice the Thompson shipment last week? It was almost canceled because of a missing clause in the contract. Lucky someone checked it before disaster." Heads turned. The words were soft, seemingly casual, but they carried weight. Ethan's laughter faltered. He glanced at me, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. I fixed that," he said quickly, trying to regain control. "No, you didn't. I did. I reviewed the files and spoke with the client." For the first time, there was silence. Eyes shifted around the table. Murmurs followed. Colleagues turned to me for clarification. Family members exchanged subtle glances. Ethan's arrogance was cracking. He tried to cover it with humor, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I didn't stop there.
The day of the reveal came quietly. No shouting, no confrontation, no dramatic entrances. Just me, the evidence, and a room full of people who thought Ethan's victory was absolute. Ethan strutted in, confident as ever, expecting applause, approval, and admiration. He didn't notice the subtle glances exchanged between the board members and employees who now trusted me. He didn't notice the slight tension in the air, the way people were waiting, watching, anticipating something he couldn't see. I walked in behind him, calm, collected, invisible to him until the first slide appeared on the projector. A timeline of mistakes, oversights, and ignored responsibilities, each one carefully documented, cross-referenced, and backed by contracts, emails, and client feedback. Ethan's smirk faltered for the first time all day. I didn't speak yet. I let the silence stretch, letting the gravity of the evidence fill the room. "Ethan," I began, my voice steady, cold in its clarity, "I hope you enjoy the view, because this is everything Grandpa trusted me to protect." He laughed nervously. "Alexa, what is this?" he asked, trying to regain control, trying to convince himself he was still untouchable. I didn't answer. I clicked through the slides. First, a contract he had signed without reading, almost losing a $1 million deal. Then, mismanaged shipments that could have cost the company clients. Then, client complaints he had ignored, all resolved quietly because of my interventions. Every slide chipped away at the armor he had worn for so long, his smug confidence dissolving in real time. I paused on the last slide, the one Grandpa had prepared for me. The legal instructions, the secret accounts, the directives that gave me the true authority over the company, the real leverage that Ethan had never seen coming. "This," I said softly, "is what Grandpa entrusted me with. The truth, the real control, the part you thought didn't exist." Ethan's face went pale. The smirk was gone. You can't. How?" I smiled slightly. "Patience, observation, and trust in someone who actually understood Grandpa's vision." The room was silent. Every family member, every board member, every employee watching. They had all assumed Ethan's inheritance and title meant absolute authority. They had all been fooled by his confidence. But the truth was now undeniable. "I've been correcting your mistakes for months," I continued, my tone calm, almost detached. "Every client, every contract, every internal issue you ignored, I fixed. And now the company, the real assets, and the real strategy are under my control." Ethan stumbled backward, his arrogance crumbling. You can't do that. It's my inheritance." I shook my head. "It's Grandpa's legacy, and he trusted me to protect it. You thought winning the will meant winning everything, but Grandpa always knew. Someone had to be vigilant, someone had to understand the responsibility, someone had to be worthy." Family members whispered among themselves, glances exchanged, murmurs of astonishment, questions, confusion. Ethan had always been the golden child, the hero of every story, the one everyone trusted. And now the hero had fallen. He tried one last defense. "This isn't fair. I inherited—" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "You inherited arrogance. You inherited ego. You inherited the illusion that winning a piece of paper meant you were the best. Grandpa knew better, and now everyone else knows too." I revealed the final piece, the letters Grandpa had left me, addressed to each family member, explaining why the inheritance was structured as it was, why I had been prepared to take over, and why Ethan had been deliberately given the illusion of power. The room was stunned. My mother's face paled. My aunt's mouth fell open. Even the board members, long loyal to Grandpa's vision, nodded subtly, recognizing the brilliance of the plan. Ethan's hands trembled. He looked around desperately, searching for an ally, a way out, a loophole. There was none. His smirk, that armor of arrogance, had shattered completely. "You underestimated me," I said softly. "You underestimated what Grandpa taught me. You underestimated what patience and strategy could achieve." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The evidence, the truth, the undeniable preparation, it was too much. His empire of confidence had crumbled, and I had built mine quietly, invisibly, in its place. I took a step forward, calm, commanding, finally visible as the force behind the company. The real leadership, the real strategy, the real vision, it's here. And from now on, everyone will see who actually earned it. The final blow came in the form of a legal confirmation. Grandpa's secret directives allowed me to assume full operational control of the company, with Ethan's title now ceremonial.
He had inherited arrogance, but not authority, and that distinction was everything. Ethan sank into a chair, pale, defeated. All the confidence, all the smiles, all the power he had thought was his, gone. I didn't gloat. Revenge, I had learned, was far more satisfying when calm, deliberate, and undeniable. The shock, the realization, the slow collapse of a lifetime of false superiority, that was more satisfying than any shouting match or confrontation could ever be. Family members approached me carefully, whispers of astonishment and awe. Colleagues began congratulating me quietly, respecting the strategy and skill it had taken to manage the company and expose the truth without chaos. Ethan, once untouchable, now sat in silence, a shadow of the man who believed he ruled everything. I looked at him calmly. "You were given everything, Ethan," I said softly, "but Grandpa knew who would actually protect it and who would use it wisely." The room remained silent. My victory wasn't just about power. It was about justice, patience, and strategy. Every lesson Grandpa had taught me had come to fruition. Ethan finally looked up, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He realized, too late, that the golden child could fall, that arrogance without understanding was fragile, that patience and preparation always win. And as the room absorbed the truth, as whispers turned to acknowledgments, as Ethan sat defeated but alive, I smiled, not out of cruelty, but because Grandpa had prepared me for this moment, and I had executed it flawlessly. The game was over, the lesson was clear, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt the weight of victory, calm, inevitable, and fully deserved.